Rum Run is a Domino Mancala token placement resource gathering game by Alex Colombe. For 2 to 4 players, best with 4, takes about an hour and a half to play. Rum Run is set in the backwoods of Kentucky bourbon country. Your objective is to build roads from the town center to any and all distilleries. From there, collect barrels of that sweet moonshine and move them to the town center. Each barrel is a point. In a 4-player game, 6 points wins the game. In a 3-player game, 7 points. And in a 2-player game, 8 points. To set up the game, lay out the game board and place the white token anywhere on an intersection on the game board. Take all tokens of a given color and lay them out in front of you. Next, take the location cards and randomly choose 4. Place those cards face down on the game board layout. Depending on which game option you choose, you can also flip the distilleries over immediately to show their production values and source of tapping the distillery. Next, lay out the obstacle cards in any area the players agree to. Next, place some fog tokens that can either offer the brave bootlegger a handy bonus or cause a disastrous turn of events to occur. After that, draw out 3 objectives that, if completed, will earn the bootlegger that completed them first a handy bonus of barrels denoted on the card. Place the maximum number of barrels that each distillery can create on the distillery. And finally, you need to determine who goes first. Each player simultaneously selects a token to play. The token with the higher value wins and goes first. Then play begins. Each player takes a turn playing a token or moving a barrel. To start off, all players must play a token adjacent to the town center on an intersection. The token must be placed such that one of the 2 values on the token is facing towards the town center and the other is facing away. If at any time when playing a token you play a double, you are allowed to play a second token immediately. Also, when placing a double, you must play your second token at a 90-degree angle to the first, or sideways from that double token. This is the only way to turn your roads in the game, so use your doubles wisely. Then players go back and forth building roads until a player reaches a fog token or a distillery. When a fog token is revealed, if it is simply a barrel or barrels, the barrels are placed on the road that was used to discover the fog token. When a player taps the distillery after building a road up to one of their connecting intersections, the number of barrels associated with that tap is then moved onto the road connecting to the distillery. In subsequent turns, barrels are moved along the path in a Mancala-like movement, where all barrels on a token are picked up and each barrel is dropped 1 space away at a time along the road. If a single barrel exists on a single token, then it is only moved to the next token. But watch out, a player can steal barrels from your road by breaking your road. If a player has a road that is adjacent to your road, a player can play a token on top of your road token, so long as the sum of their tokens are more than the sum of your token. At which point, the player who broke the road and builds on top of the tokens receives the barrels on that token. Each barrel is a point in a 4-player game. 6 points wins the game. In a 3-player game, 7 points wins the game. And in a 2-player game, 8 points wins the game. May the best bootlegger win.
All right, now we're going to go ahead and review Rum Run Deluxe Edition from the Game Crafter, created by Alex Colombe.
Colombe.
Words. Unique New York. Watermelon. Brian, tell me, what do you think about the look and feel of Rum Run Deluxe?
Yeah, granted, this is the deluxe edition, but it deserves that subtitle. I mean, the pieces are fantastic. You have little mini barrels for the barrels of rum. You have the fun cards. I loved that the distilleries are square, so they fit on the grid, and then you can have them face down, face up when you get to them if you want the randomness. You can start with them face up. You have the different hazard cards or obstacle cards. I mean, all in all, you look down, you know what you're looking at. It's not hard to distinguish. Oh yeah, that's a 5-3. It's going straight. That's a 5-5. T intersections or X intersections, whatever you have you. It's a very simple game looking at it, but I wish the board was a bit more colorful. Yes. It's very light green.
It has a very old-timey feel to it as well. It reminds me of older versions of Pit,
Yeah.
Back when they were grains instead of, oil and whatever. So if you look at these cards, they use this almost same brown color. I don't know if you can see that, but And then the text on them are just like brown boxes with little text on them. It seemed like there could have been done something more. So I completely agree with you there.
But part of that was this idea of, your old-time run runners.
Yeah.
And so they wanted that old-timey feel. But the board especially, I felt was just very bland, and I think more could have been done with that. So I'm gonna propose 1.5 out of 2.
I actually thought it could have done a lot better, so I gave it 1 out of 2.
1 out of 2.
Now we could go 1.5 out of 2. I'll
Give me your reasoning.
concede
Give me your
that.
reasoning.
There could have just been a lot more done with this. And then on top of that, if you look at the rule book was great and it came with a whole bunch of other things, but there were a lot of mistakes in the rule book and some rules were not covered. And so I think that factors into the lower score I gave it on the look and the feel. In fact, in the middle of the rule book, actually, I'm gonna let you talk about it.
Yeah,
because-
so the rule book looks gorgeous initially. And you know what? I think we will bring this down a bit. Let me read you the order of the pages in the rule book. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 19, page 18, page 17, page 16.
So halfway through, it starts going backwards.
So I was really confused trying to learn this game, and I'm like, why is it explaining this and it hasn't told me how you play the game yet? Well, it's because the pages are not in order.
Imagine if it referenced the previous page.
Yeah.
This would be the
And
next.
it's a few pages down. So I think you're right with that. How about we bring it to
125.
125, meet in the middle.
I'll buy that. And don't get me wrong, the game is beautiful. I mean, if you look at the cover artwork on the box, that's a really fun thematic image. There's artwork throughout inside the rule book that was greatly helpful. It's just when it came to the game board and some of the cards, there could have been a little bit more.
Yeah, it has room for improvement.
Yeah. So
how,
1, 2.
How about balance and mechanics?
I gave it full points.
Okay.
That's where this game really, really excels. So I gave it 2 out of 2. Reason for that is there are so many variants and options you can pick. You can really tailor it to how your game style works. So there is some elements that are randomness or unknowns that can really change the balance of the game. So for instance, Brian built into a distillery that had 6, 3, and 1 in it. And then I built into one that had a 3 and 1. So he immediately has a potential of 10 barrels of moonshine, and I have 4. It just seemed like, But then I was able to build into his road, infiltrate, and prevent him from getting some of those barrels while I won some other objectives. But the events were random. I mean, there was a lot of randomness, but we just chose to build that in.
Yeah.
Had you just chose the base game, purely strategic. So I gave it 2 out of 2 because you could tailor it to your needs. For that, what do you think about pacing, Brian?
This game was paced very well. You have a choice: do I build a road or do I caravan my booze? Then the next player, build a road or caravan. Next player, build a road or caravan. So it goes really quickly. There could be some setback on what do I place, but again, like dominoes, once you're placing, all right, my last road ended with a 5. My new road has to start with a 5.
Right.
So that eliminates a lot of those options outside of that first tile.
Right. So then you're down to what, 4 pieces that you can pick from in the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Towards the end, there's 1.
Yeah, and so it paced very well. Even I think with up to the max 4 players, it would pace very well. There would be some debating amongst when do I want to cut off a person or how do I want to play various things. But even then, because there's so few options, the turns are going really quickly.
I would agree.
So I gave it full marks for pacing.
Let's talk about theme for a bit. Out of 2 points on our score, I gave it 1.5. And the reason for that is the objectives and the events and then the different locations really added a lot of flavor to the game. So in each event, they talk about maybe a historical implication of something that happened. You know, there's an old fort where there used to be a cache of weapons until someone dropped a cigarette and it exploded or something. And now you're storing some of your hooch there. You found some old barrels there or something. It just added a whole level to the bootlegging theme, if you will, which is kind of an odd theme, but it works in this game. And it particularly nested in the mechanics very well, which is something I really like to see. So I gave it 1.5 out of 2.
I'm gonna make an argument for 1.75.
Okay.
Hear me out. Now, granted, I did not enlighten Sean on the entire backstory of this game before we started playing, but the pips on the dominoes represents how many gang members or the strength of that gang, so to speak, that is guarding your road. And so the stronger your gang, the higher chance that you can take out the opposing gang and surpass that road dominance, which is why you can build over and take out each other's roads. And so I thought that was really cool. And then also with the event cards, there's that flavor text on it that I thought was fantastic. I wouldn't give it full marks, however, so I'm making an argument for 175, because I don't necessarily feel like I'm running rum, because I feel like I wouldn't be so intent on hijacking this guy. I'm just like, hey, I just want to sell as much of this as I can. I'm gonna find another town if this guy's going to make such a problem. And so, I mean, I think they could almost even add a multiple town, and the more barrels that are brought to a town, the value of the barrels change. And so as opposed to just getting the number of barrels, you're trying to get money, and the money would be based on how many barrels are at the town.
That would be interesting. It would almost become a railroad builder sort of a
You know how I feel about railroad
theme
builders.
to that. Yeah, it would be a rum-infused railroad.
Ooh,
Yeah.
buying me some tickets.
I like it though, 1.75.
All right, so was it easy to learn is the next question, and we weight that out of 1. I'm giving it half marks on that, so 0.5. And the reason for that is the rule book had some issues. We also found some level of difficulty figuring out the peculiarities with some of the interchanges. And maybe it could be if you are a dominoes player, you know exactly how to deal with these situations. So the question became early on, can you just put your highest markers all the way around the main town? And I think you can. There's nothing that says you can't, but it just means you're locked in there and no one else can build in there. So I ended up taking 3/4 of the town around once Brian played some of his higher tokens, which gave me a massive advantage considering I built over the top of one of his roads. So he only had one inlet and he had to pretty much reconstruct his entire road around that.
Yep.
That was one of the issues. Another issue was when you build into these flipped over distilleries, okay, then you flip it over and find out that you're not next to it and you didn't use a double, you can't build sideways. So how do you get there? I mean, the only thing is to replace that one piece somewhere else, but then you'd have to play a double there and then you have to play a double to, you know what I mean? Like it becomes a little bit Tetris and you don't have the pieces. So there's some questions there that I don't think are answered in the rule book. However, we discovered after we started playing that underneath some of the extra material is a really awesome flowchart that I wish other games would come out with. So it was kind of a FAQ flowchart system where it said, are you trying to place a piece that isn't a double? Or are you trying to overlay a different road? No, okay, flow down here. That, you know, I mean, it was, I don't know. Flash that up there, Brian, if you're editing this later.
Flash.
Or future Sean, whoever.
Future editor.
So I thought it did well for the things it did cover, but in some areas there was just some gray area. There's a lot of room for house rules. So I gave it half marks. What do you think?
I think I'm gonna agree with you on that. The main drawback for me was the rule book, but that is a very simple fix on part of the designer. And one of the joys of the Game Crafter is, boom, upload new rule book, and that's now what will be sent to any future purchasers. Fantastic. So he may have even updated the rule book by the time he sent this to us.
All right. What do you think about replayability?
When I look at a game's replayability, I think of, is this a game I would bring to game night week to week to week to week? And with this one, I would say for a while. I mean, I could see taking it to a few game nights back to back and being like, hey guys, let's play this. But I mean, after playing it a certain amount of times, I feel you would start to develop that unbeatable strategy. And so there's kind of that degree of once you min-max the game, there's no coming back from it. And so I think that's a big element that people would need to look at, is saying, okay, well, will my group try to play this to the point where no one will win? We're just going to completely cutthroat and make this a 5-hour thing or not. For my group, I would give this a 1.5. I could see us playing this, you know, back to back for a month or two, but then eventually, you know, a new game would take its place. But what are your thoughts?
I think I would agree. Since it's based on two classical games, Dominoes and Mancala, it's hard not to have replayability. You know, the only other classical game they could throw in there was either Go or chess. You know, and then it's like, okay, yeah, I could play this hundreds of times. In fact, people have.
Yeah.
They just added a theme onto it that works very well, and yeah, it absolutely makes sense why this is a game that can be replayed a number of times.
Yeah.
So, what'd you give it?
I gave it 1.5.
1.5. That's reasonable. I had 1.75, but that's in the margin, so I'll give you 1.5.
All right.
Out of 10. If you are a bootlegger, write in. See, tell us how much this actually relates to your job. We'd love to know. Brian, one last question I'd like to ask on this, on our reviews. How much is the game, and is it worth the cost?
The game is currently running for $60 for the deluxe version, less for the basic and paper versions. That's the average cost of most board games nowadays. $60 is a very typical MSRP, and I think I would get just as much play value out of the standard games.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to see some improvements. I would like to see better art, especially in the card backgrounds or the board backgrounds and whatnot. But I would say, especially if you like route games, route maneuvering, train-esque games, I think this would be a fantastic game for that collection. What are your thoughts?
I would agree. It would be nice to have a little bit better art, but sometimes when I'm really into a game, I just completely throw the art out the window. As much as I hate to say that because we give it 2 points out of 10, purely for art. But I would agree, this is an abstract enough game, I mean, just like Dominoes, just like Mancala, that maybe you don't need the art, but it would be nice to see that for the cost.
Yeah.
But the replayability, I think, is there.
Yeah.
So how much did you say the standard version was?
Standard version?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. The deluxe is 60.
Oh,
I
okay.
can look it up.
Yeah. So the Rum Run Basic is 30.
Yep.
And so you could buy it at that level, and he also has a mini version as well, I imagine for traveling version, which is 15. And from what I can tell, it has all the same flavor and elements as the deluxe version. It's just, you probably don't have these barrels and these thicker chips. So, I think it's worth it, at least buy in at the basic level, and you can pick it up at the Game Crafter. All right, thanks guys. Bye.
That was a really long pause.